Well, I think the next leader needs to be somebody that is just hell-bent on getting Trump's agenda done. That is the most important thing. He has a mandate. We've got to get his nominees done. We've got to get his tax cuts in. We've got to get all of his legislation passed. It's as simple as that. Who is going to get that done? Now, with regard to the nominees, you know, the Senate is a process-driven place. So what you have to do is you have to set up a process to get it done. We can't allow the president to do nominations if we go in recess. So I believe we ought to do that. I believe we ought to have a process to do that. Bill Clinton did it. Barack Obama did it. George W. Bush did it. The only president recently has been allowed to do it is Donald Trump. That has to change. We've got to allow Donald Trump to get his nominees in so we get this government going and get the changes made to turn this economy around, turn the world around. The world's on fire right now. The border's open. We're losing full-time jobs. There's so much to do. We've got to be in here full-time getting our job done.
You know, if you're a MAGA Republican, you want Rick Scott to go be the majority leader. John Thune is an acolyte of Mitch McConnell. We've seen where Mitch has been in President Trump's first term. Rick Scott is somebody who's going to lead from the front, and he's been very forward-facing about Donald Trump. There hasn't been a lot of negative comments that I've ever seen that Rick Scott's made about Donald Trump. I don't think the same is true with some of the other candidates in this race. This is a secret ballot. It should be an open ballot. I think that everybody in America should know who is voting for whom for the Senate majority leadership. And I really think what should happen, Ed, is they should push this vote back past Wednesday morning so that Donald Trump has an opportunity to address this conference and have the U.S. senators understand exactly what Donald Trump wants, which is he wants a partner in the U.S. Senate, not someone who's going to be an obstacle. And so, listen, the conservatives have some real concern about just naming a Mitch McConnell acolyte to take over this role and not having someone there who's there to support the president who's coming with a mandate.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about some not so good news. I know for the most part, most of everything that I've been talking about has been good news since Trump won the election, because the American people not only gave Trump the victory, but they sent him back to Washington, D.C. with a mandate. And you would think that the rest of the Republicans would get on board with this mandate, that the Trump agenda is the most popular Republican agenda that we've seen in a long, long, long time. Okay, Trump has been more successful than the establishment neocon conservatives that have dominated Republican politics since Reagan, really. And you would think, again, they would get the message. They would understand that, you know what, the American people, they want new leadership, right? They want to move in a different direction. They want to embrace America first, the MAGA agenda, the Trump agenda. However, the swamp creatures in the Senate apparently did not get the message, because they had an opportunity to show the American people, to show the conservative base of the country that, yes, we're on board with the Trump agenda. However, they decided that, you know what, the swamp's agenda, the uniparty agenda, is probably more important, as the GOP has taken back the Senate. However, most of us should understand that, hey, the job is not done yet, because the leader of the GOP in the Senate ultimately becomes the Senate majority leader, and that individual has a whole lot of power when it comes to executing on Trump's agenda. And we all saw how swamp creatures like Mitch McConnell was very antithetical towards Trump and his agenda in his first term. Okay, I talk about this quite a bit, right? One of the reasons why Trump did not accomplish as much as he wanted to accomplish in his first administration was literally because Mitch McConnell and the establishment were standing in the way, right? Actual establishment Republicans. It weren't just Democrats who were against Trump. It was actually the Republicans as well, too. And again, the Republicans this time around had an opportunity to show us that, hey, no, we're on board with the Trump agenda by electing an actual pro-Trump Senate leader, like, for example, Senator Rick Scott from Florida, who decided to throw his hat in the ring to be the leader of the Republicans in the Senate, along with Mitch McConnell puppets, John Cornyn from Texas and John Thune from South Dakota. Take a look.
But look, this is a private ballot, and the Senate is widely a chamber that is supposed to be immune from outside pressure, right? That's why these senators serve for 6 years. And to that point, the Senate has historically been somewhere that really does not have some of the pressure that Donald Trump has tried to put on it. You saw in the first term that the Senate really did act as a check and a balance on Trump. I think the big question that we have right now, Can we expect the same from this Senate as we did from the Senate in 2017? And today is really the first big test of that. Rick Scott is clearly the one who is most aligned with Trump, the most in sync with Trump. Now, Trump, of course, has not come out. He has not endorsed yet in this race. There's still a very good chance that we could see Majority Leader Thune or Majority Leader Cornyn. But I think really that's going to be a big test and a big tell from the results we see today is how much senators feel like they have a mandate. And to that point, Trump has gone around talking a little bit about allowing these recess appointments. It would allow him to kind of bypass the Senate's authority to approve potential cabinet picks and other top-level administration officials. And some members, actually most members who I talked to last night said, look, we totally get that Trump wants to get people through the Senate quickly. We're 100% on board with that. But we have a responsibility to advise and consent. And you could tell these lawmakers, they do not want to give up that power that the Senate has.
Steph, what do you think about the sort of pressures that are being brought to bear? And is Thune a Trump guy, not a Trump guy, if that's how this all gets played out?
I mean, look, both Thune and Cornyn have had a very rocky relationship with the former president. I mean, there were times where, Trump was even threatening to try to mount a primary challenge against Thune just a few years ago. But of course, Thune and Cornyn also read the writing on the wall. They know that in today's day and age in the GOP, it's not acceptable for a Republican leader to not have a good relationship with the former president, now the president-elect. And so both have put in the time to kind of rebuild those relationships. And it's something that both of them, talk about a lot to the press and also with their members, trying to prove that they are someone who can work with the president and get things done on the Republican agenda. But there are still some who don't feel like it's enough.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement, right? When she says there are some who feel like it's not enough. No, a whole lot of people, the actual American people, did not feel like it's enough because John Thune just isn't opposed to Trump. He was very anti-Trump, right? He's woke as hell. And people have not forgotten about the things that he said about Trump over the years. Again, as somebody who is basically Mitch McConnell 2.0. And we know how much of a pain in the ass Mitch McConnell was to Trump. Take a look.
Madam President, in the wake of recent tragic deaths of several African Americans at the hands of the police, our country has reached a turning point. Americans of every race, background, and political persuasion are calling for change. Too many Americans feel unsafe right now. Too many Americans live in fear that what happened to George Floyd could happen to their own fathers and sons and brothers. Too many Americans see in law enforcement officers individuals to be feared rather than trusted. Americans are ready for all of that to end. They want reform and increased accountability. They want to make sure that we are holding our law enforcement officers to the highest standards.
If Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, would you support him?
Well, I'm hoping, Leanne, to have other options. And
verdict in the Trump trial could come next week. If he's convicted, could you support him still?
I'm not. We'll see how the trial comes out. I'm not weighing in on that.
but it's certainly not helpful, and it's not presidential. President needs to stay focused. We've got an agenda.
Have you reached out to the White House to express that?
I haven't reached out specifically with this latest tweet, but I think the White House is fully aware of what many of us think in terms of the use of social media, and I think the president, I'd like to see him confine it to talking about the issues that the American people care about in his agenda, which is jobs and the economy and tax reform and infrastructure and health care reform.
We just heard from the White House saying,
Yeah, so not only is John Thune an anti-Trumper, and he's woke, and he's also super pro-Ukraine, right? Like, he wants to send more money to Ukraine. Again, he's a part of the establishment, the uniparty that wants to go about with business as per the usual, right, the America Last agenda. Not only is he that, right, but he's also, again, just not very conservative in his voting record, okay? And that is why you had a whole bunch of people, like, for example, Tucker Carlson, also some people close to Trump, although Trump didn't really come out himself and say anything about the Senate race. But you had a whole lot of people come out and say, no, we want Rick Scott, okay? And you would think that the choice would be easy. I mean, look at Rick Scott's actual voting record, right? Yeah, he tends to vote more in line with conservatives than John Thune, right? However, apparently the GOP senators came out and told some of the propagandists in the media that, no, we don't like this, right? We don't like that people like Tucker Carlson and the average everyday American, that they're calling our phones and telling us that they want the actual conservative, right? They want the more conservative pro-Trump option to lead the Senate. We don't like that at all, okay? In fact, these cowardly GOP senators decided that, you know what? We are not going to have a public vote in regards to who we're going to vote for. No, we're going to do it behind closed doors, because clearly they don't have the huevos to show the American people who they voted for, to show the American people that they voted against what they wanted. Take a look.
It took 2 rounds of balloting for Republican senators to pick their next majority leader, but they have settled on John Thune of South Dakota. Thune currently serves as the second-ranking Republican, the Republican whip right now in what is a minority conference, but he will quickly ascend to the top leadership post in the United States Senate on January 3rd, when the new Congress is sworn in. That's because Republicans have, of course, won the majority after the fall election. Now, this is obviously a major moment on Capitol Hill, in part because it is a true changing of the guard. Mitch McConnell has been the Republican leader, both majority and minority leader, going all the way back to 2007. And so he has held somewhat of an iron grip on this Republican conference in the Senate during that entire period of time. Of course, McConnell announcing earlier this year that he was stepping away from his leadership post. He's still going to remain in the Senate, but that opened the door for this next generation of Republican leaders to take over. And John Thune is someone who is well liked within his conference. He's somebody who has a number of good relationships with the rank and file members of the Senate. But he was facing a bit of a challenge in the form of Rick Scott of Florida, who kind of fashioned himself publicly as the true ally of the new president-elect Donald Trump, said that he would work to carry out Donald Trump's agenda, and basically tacitly saying that he didn't think John Thune or John Cornyn, who was the other person in this race from Texas, would carry out the agenda in the same way that Scott would be willing to do. In part because for a good part of his career, Thune has kept Trump at somewhat of an arm's length. He did not initially endorse him in this past race for president, instead going with Tim Scott, his colleague from South Carolina. But then eventually, after Scott got out of the race and Trump locked up the nomination, Thune did get behind Trump's campaign and has worked very hard to build a relationship with the president-elect.
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. So this took 2 rounds of ballots, okay? The first round ended with 23 votes for Thune, 15 votes for John Cornyn, and 13 votes for Scott. And then Scott ended up getting eliminated. And then in the second ballot, John Thune ended up winning over John Cornyn. Now, I'm not surprised by this at all. In fact, this is what I expected. I kind of knew that this what was going to happen, especially when Trump refused to get involved, right? When he didn't really state exactly who his preference was. And that is because this is what the establishment tends to do, right? They tend to say, screw the people. We're going to go along with what we want to do because they feel like they're entitled to their own agenda outside of what the American people voted for, right? I mean, that basically defines Mitch McConnell's career for the most part. And they want a continuation of that, right? In the sense that a lot of these guys, the reason why they got behind John Thune is because as somebody that is basically hand chosen by Mitch McConnell to take over, he's going to inherit Mitch McConnell's infrastructure. He's going to have the support of Mitch McConnell, which means that he's going to have all of the money, right? And a lot of these guys are promised favors and they're promised money and support for their campaigns in exchange for their allegiance to somebody like a Mitch McConnell. Okay, so, a lot of these guys, these people that lined up and voted for John Thune against the will of the people, against the will of their constituents, they did so because they know that, okay, well, John Thune is going to take care of me, right? John Thune is going to do me a favor and he's going to help me get reelected and he's going to put my interest ahead of the interest of the people, right? That's exactly how this works. Okay. Now, again, we don't really know who voted for who outside of the people that came out and announced that they voted for Rick Scott because of the secret ballot. But even then with the secret ballot, because it is a secret, the people who came out and said, yeah, I voted for Rick Scott. Yeah, they might have voted for him just because they didn't want the backlash, right? But they already knew that he would lose. Okay. So it's not like they really wanted him to win. They just knew that, okay, well, he's going to lose, so it doesn't really hurt for me to vote for him. So I'm just saying this is why I can't really call out any individual person in regards to who they voted for because I just kind of understand how these politicians operate, right? Like I understand the type of games they play. Even the people that voted for Rick Scott may or may not have actually really wanted him to win. They just voted for him because they knew that, okay, well, he's going to lose, so it's safe for me to vote for him. And that way I don't have to get a whole lot of backlash from my constituents, right? So again, that's just kind of how the game works. And I really don't like that. That's one of the things that I do not like the most about Congress and how they operate is that a lot of these people are cowards, right? Every single vote that these people cast should be transparent, including who is going to be in leadership. And in fact, that is the one vote that I think should be public, right? That should be a very public vote. And remember, we already kind of went through this, guys, when it comes to the Republicans in the House last year when Kevin McCarthy was removed. And we went through so many rounds of trying to get a new leader. And a lot of Republicans, they just refused to get on board with somebody that the voters actually wanted, right? Everybody wanted Jim Jordan, but they was just like, no, right? We're just not going to do it because again, what they're concerned about the most is who can raise the most money, who can scratch their back, who can help save their jobs. They're not concerned about the actual voters, right? And that's just the reality of politics, especially when it comes to selecting who's going to be the leader of the party, right? It's about who's the most aligned with the agenda that's going to help most of these people keep their jobs, right? And that's kind of what happens. They all fall in line like puppets, okay? Because that's what a vast majority of these people are, right? So with that being said, what does this actually mean for Trump's agenda? Well, it's not the end of the world, but it's certainly a problem, okay? Because again, like I told you guys, Mitch McConnell was a thorn in Trump's side in regards to the America First agenda under his first administration, and I expect John Thune to do the same. Even though John Thune is coming out and saying, yeah, I want to work with Trump, and he's trying his best to get in the good graces of Trump, which is probably why Trump didn't come out and really endorse anybody. He tried to stay out of it. But regardless, senators like John Thune tend to be more establishment first rather than America first. So when it comes to certain topics and subjects like, for example, the border or Ukraine, when it comes to the legislation there, it's probably not going to be as conservative as we would like it to be because, again, these people, they're on board with the establishment agenda. And we all know that the establishment, they want open borders, right? A lot of these Republicans low-key are on board with open borders because they want the cheap labor, okay, for businesses, right? We all know how much this guy wants to continue to fund the war in Ukraine and stuff like that. So, again, he's going to continue the Mitch McConnell agenda, right? And with the House having a slim majority for the GOP, that also makes it harder for the GOP to really push legislation that is as conservative or as pro-America first as it should be, right? So that's why this is a big deal because the GOP already is going to have a slim majority in the House, and now in the Senate where they have a little bit more breathing room, okay, the Senate majority leader is essentially a never Trumper, right? So, when you have that happening, okay, that is a problem because that means that the legislation that comes out of Congress is not going to be as pro-America first or conservative as I would like it to be, considering how we have the House and the Senate. And also on top of that, Trump's cabinet picks, his appointments have to be confirmed as well too by the Senate. So hopefully John Thune does not play around, does not mess around when it comes to getting Trump's picks into their position so they can go ahead and start implementing the America First agenda.
And when it comes to choosing nominees who will pass Senate confirmation?
Well, as you know, the Senate has a advise and consent role under the Constitution, so we will do everything we can to process his noms quickly, get them installed in their position so they can begin to implement his agenda.
If you have a Thune and he begins to become an obstructionist, does the president have the ability to say, J.D. Vance, go in there and take control of the Senate and do what John Adams did?
Absolutely. So you've talked about this. You've been great about it. There is a little known procedure in the Senate that gives the majority leader the right to be recognized on the floor first. Who decides to recognize them? The person sitting in the chair at the front of the room. That chair belongs to J.D. Vance. Anybody else sitting in that chair is borrowing his seat. He can walk in the room, kick them out, take the seat, and recognize whoever he wants who is going to move his President Trump's nominees. So he can actually decide really who's running the show.
Why haven't they done that in the past?
There was talk in the last Trump administration of doing this. I ultimately don't know why they decided not to. There's always a negotiation about these kind of things. Having the threat of doing that is certainly powerful, and maybe Pence just wasn't comfortable with it. JD would probably be a lot more comfortable with that.
Oh, yeah.
He's been a senator.
But, you know, it's going to be up to Trump and the White House and the people as well, too, to put pressure on John Thune and the House Republicans to get on board with the agenda that the Trump administration wants. So, again, it's not the end of the world, but it just definitely makes it harder. Again, if Trump wants to do things that the establishment Republicans don't agree with, if he wants to do these things, it's going to make it a lot harder for him to actually get it done. However, again, it's not the end of the world. We can still get it done. We just have to put pressure on them to do it, okay? And we know how much they hate pressure, right? These are the same people that boo-hoo, whine, and cry. Oh, we don't like when you pressure us to not vote for an agenda that you don't agree with. We don't like that, right? That's essentially what they were doing. This time around with the Senate leadership elections and also doing the House leadership elections, that's what they do every single time, right? They boo-hoo, whine, and cry. I've never heard these people cry as much about what Democrats are doing as much as they cry about when the voters demand that they stand up for an America First agenda. So again, you know, it's not the end of the world, okay? We can still get things done. We still have a majority in the Senate and the House. It's going to be up to the Trump White House and the people to put pressure on them in order to go along with the Trump agenda. But again, this is a great reminder of why primary elections are so important, right? Because you want Republicans that are not pro-establishment, that are actually pro-America First, to be in office, right? And that way you don't have to deal with this, okay? But, you know, hey, the movement is still young, it's still early, and we're making a whole lot of progress. It's just that we have to continue to hold these individuals accountable, okay, for their actions. It's just that a lot of these people go out of their way to avoid accountability, which is why there was a secret ballot, okay? Very cowardly move from the GOP senators. But hey, you know, it is what it is. Again, this is why primary elections are so important. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.